Hello everyone and welcome to SUNUP. I'm Lyndall Stout. We begin today on the topic of ag policy. The Inflation Reduction Act passed last summer has a loan repayment program that could impact many Oklahomans. OSU Extension Ag Policy Specialist Dr. Amy Hagerman tells us about the eligibility requirements.
So for the last few years, we've heard a lot about debt forgiveness for different types of producers, but especially for our historically underserved producers. This came out of several different pieces of legislation, and it's caused a lot of confusion. In the Inflation Reduction Act, we actually got a new set of guidelines for that. It actually broke it into two kinds of financial assistance. The first is for producers who are financially stressed in their operations, and that's still going directly through the Farm Service Agency. The second set of assistance is for producers who have been discriminated against by USDA in the lending process. This is now going through a third-party management system to put that application together. And as we've gotten more information on this, we've learned more about how to do the application or what kinds of documentation is necessary, those pieces of information. So I just want to encourage people, if you feel like this might apply to you, to actually reach out through 22007apply.gov. Look at the frequently asked questions, look at our local service center that we have right here in Oklahoma, and get the information you need to actually explore that assistance for your operation.
In its first year of operation, our state's new 988 Mental Health Lifeline received more than 40,000 calls, no doubt saving lives and helping people find support resources in their communities. The Oklahoma Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services says 1 in 5 state residents have a mental health issue. It is always okay to ask for help. Call or text 988. You can also find resources through OSU Extension on our website.
Welcome to the Mesonet Weather Report. I'm Wes Lee. Managing cattle in the wintertime can be difficult due to cold weather, limited forage supplies, and supplemental feeding requirements. A tool called the Mesonet Cattle Comfort Index was developed to help livestock producers better manage animals in extreme hot and cold environments. This map from Tuesday shows that on that day, the index was either in the comfortable or slight cold caution range. This index utilizes temperature, wind speed, humidity, and sunlight to come up with a number that symbolizes how cattle might react due to the weather. A feature of the tool allows producers to look at a graph of the past 45 days or the past 10 days along with the 2-day forecast feature. Available tables show that in winter, temperatures are adjusted higher due to high humidity and winds, but lowered with strong sunlight. Cattle exposed to a colder index will require some extra attention to help them cope with the added stress. A rule of thumb for feeding cows in cold weather is to increase feed by 1% each degree the Cattle Comfort Index is below 32 with a dry hair coat. Limit increases to no more than 25% to avoid digestion issues. For extremely cold temperatures or wet conditions, it may require an increased feed level before or after it occurs. Now here's Gary, focusing on the most current drought data.
Thanks, Wes, and good morning, everyone. Well, last week's snowfall did give us just a little bit of improvement on the latest U.S. Drought Monitor map. I hope the rain we received earlier this week is going to give us a few improvements as well, but of course it has to fall in the right place. That being said, let's take a look at the newest Drought Monitor map and see where we're at. Well, we still have the same basic pattern, not a lot of big changes. We did erase a little bit of that moderate to severe drought up in north central Oklahoma, just a tiny bit of it, where that's heavier snow fell in just the right spot. Unfortunately, though, we still have those long-term drought conditions in north central Oklahoma with the extreme drought, also down in far southwestern Oklahoma and a little bit down into south central, southeastern Oklahoma. So these are the areas we most need to target. Now let's take a look at why we're having those long-term drought conditions. If you look at the map for 2023 thus far, at least through most of November, we do see, over in southeastern Oklahoma, we have a good 45 to 60 inches in the extreme parts of that area of the state. Over in southwest Oklahoma, however, less than 20 inches in places, also out in the panhandle. But the northwestern half of the state, down into southwest Oklahoma, in dire need of rainfall. And that also shows up on the departure from normal map for that same time frame. Deficits up in north central and northeast Oklahoma, greater than 10 inches in some cases as much as a foot. Down in southwest Oklahoma, we see greater than 6 inches and also greater than 6 inches down in south central Oklahoma. So again, these are the areas that need the most help, at least right now, for drought conditions. Well, let's take a little bit of a look ahead as we get farther into December, into that first and second week. Unfortunately, we do see continued increased odds for above normal temperature, so that won't help the drought situation if we do get a little bit more evaporation with that heat. Then we look at the rainfall. When we look at this December 7th through 13th time frame, we don't see any wet conditions in the state, but we also don't see a lot of abnormally dry conditions popping up on this outlook. So I guess that's the best news. Okay, it's a dry time of the year anyway, so any precipitation we can get goes a long way towards relieving drought, or at least stopping it in its tracks. That's it for this time. We'll see you next time on the Mesonet Weather Report.
We're joined now by Dr. Derrell Peel, our livestock marketing specialist. Derrell, hard to believe we're moving into the final weeks of the year. How would you describe the cattle market situation?
Well, it's kind of a mixed bag right now. We've got, obviously, prices are well above a year ago, so we've got pretty strong markets. There's a lot of things going on in the markets right now. There's a lot of kind of general nervousness about the broader market, the global situation. There's some concerns about demand as we end up the year. So we've got kind of a mixed bag of things trying to play out here at the end of the year and set the stage for next year.
Let's start with calf and stocker markets. How are they looking?
The calf and stocker markets have been really strong, continue to be, and I think they really reflect probably the broader underlying market fundamentals better. Obviously, we've had better wheat pasture conditions. We are getting some wheat pasture. There's been strong demand for these lightweight calves. And so those prices are running, 55% above a year ago. We've had a tremendous run up over the last year in these markets, and they continue very strong on limited numbers.
How about bigger feeder cattle?
The bigger feeder cattle have seen a little more pressure because the futures markets, both the feeder and live cattle futures, have been under a really massive correction. They've been in a very negative tone here for the last several weeks, and that has put some pressure on the cash markets. These bigger feeder cattle, of course, are the ones that match up with that feeder cattle contract. So we have seen some pressure in that market, and we've seen a little bit of divergence between the big feeder cattle prices. They've gone down a little bit. They're still running 20 to 25 to 35% above a year ago.
Now, how about fed cattle markets? How are they looking?
Well, fed cattle markets, again, they've seen the pressure from the futures market. So they kind of move sideways through the summer and into the fall. They've been under a little bit of pressure. Now we're still well above a year ago for these markets as well. But again, trying to sort out some of these kind of broader market concerns and match them up against the supply fundamentals, which are still very supportive.
And then last but not least, box beef. How's that looking?
Box beef gets us closer to the consumer, to the demand side, and there's a lot of nervousness right now about that. Box beef prices have actually been fairly constant here lately, under a little bit of pressure, but nothing significant at this point in time. But there is a lot of broader nervousness about, you know, everything from geopolitical events to just the state of the U.S. economy, the macroeconomic situation. So I think we're kind of biding our time. We've seen, you know, continued general strength for particularly the middle meats, but we'll have to see how things go forward here.
At our house, we're thinking about the holidays and what will be on the table. How are prices looking for consumers as we wind down the year?
You know, at this point in time, we haven't seen, you know, any real relief in these retail prices. With a tighter supply of beef, we continue to see very strong retail prices. So I don't think we're going to see a lot of change in those markets as we finish out the year.
Okay, Derrell, thanks a lot. We'll see you next time.
Good morning, Oklahoma, and welcome to Cow-Calf Corner. This week we talk about freeze branding of beef cattle. And as we've talked about in past segments over time, if we want to have good production records in a herd of cows, it's very important that we've got some sort of permanent identification on those cows. Now, we can use ear tags and a variety of things that may get lost, but the age-old identification system of branding is proven throughout the industry, and particularly at this point in time, a lot of cattle producers prefer freeze branding over fire branding. We're going to do less damage to the hide. It's a fairly simple process once you get comfortable with what you actually need to do. And Grant Hubbard, our Purebred Beef Cattle Center headquarters manager, is joining us today. I appreciate Grant taking time off from preparing for the Cowboy Classic sale in April. One of the things we point out when it comes to freeze branding is we want to do it at times of the year when we've actually got hair growing on these cattle. The process by which freeze branding works is we actually freeze and kill off the pigment, and so that the hair grows back white after we've completed the freeze branding procedure by a few weeks after we've done it. So it works really well on black cattle, really well on red cattle, not so good on white cattle just because of that. But the process we use here at Purebred Beef Cattle Center has proven to be pretty effective. Customers have been very complimentary of it, and we'll walk you through some of the things that we do here. And behind us you can see some of the equipment that we've got set up. So Grant, as we get started, I know here in a minute we're actually going to freeze brand one. But how long ago today did you start preparation to get the irons activated and stuff like that?
We let the irons sit in an alcohol or methanol solution with dry ice in it for about an hour and a half. When the frost starts building up on the irons, that means they're cold enough and ready to go.
Just walk me through the procedure. We're going to do some heifers today, some of our replacement heifers here at the school. From the time we've caught that heifer and have her secured in the chute, and we know that a chute's very important for the safety of everybody and animal involved in this, what's going to happen at that point to complete the procedure?
When we go to freeze brand these yearling heifers, we'll get them caught in the chute, squeeze them down. We'll shear off a section of their hide with a surgical blade to make sure that's nice and tight to the hide when the brand is applied. We'll shear it off, soak it, then spray it down with alcohol, and let the brand sit on there for a minute to a minute and 15 seconds. And do that repeatedly for all their tattoo digits.
And Grant, what about, I know we're going to use a rice root or a currycomb here to clean up that area. Are we doing that before we peel that hair off or after?
We will do that after to make sure all that debris is out of there after we've sheared off the hair. The irons will stay on the hide for about a minute and 15 seconds. And make sure right there about the 45-second mark, we take them irons and really roll in the edges of there so it's nice, crisp, and it comes out number full and form.
And the irons we use here at the school, they're about 3 to 3.5 inch irons?
Yes, sir.
And we like the size of those because as we do it on approximately yearlings, they continue to get a little bigger with age. They don't get obnoxiously big, and yet they're big enough that if we're out checking heat in the pasture, and we got that hip exposed to us, we're going to see that and know what animal we're actually looking at. What else to tell us about it, Grant? We got the iron, what we need, the methanol and the dry ice. We're getting methanol from a gas station nearby. Yep. We're getting our dry ice from grocery stores.
Yes, sir.
Producers may need to investigate, do some homework on where you can secure those things. We're mixing it to activate it with the irons in it. We know we need a spray bottle of alcohol, the clippers, a rice root or a curry comb, something like that to get that hide cleaned up, and some means of timing.
Yes, we use a stopwatch here, or set an alarm on your phone for a minute, so then you don't have to have it in your hand. You can use both hands to freeze brand.
And I guess if we're doing this out at in the middle of a pasture, we got to have a source of electricity for our clippers, so possibly a generator if we don't have an electrical outlet in the barn.
Yep. And 2 insulated coolers also to keep that dry ice from melting off at a quicker rate and keep the irons cold.
So if we're going to be freeze branding all day long, about how much methanol and how much dry ice do we need to start the day with?
2 to 3 gallons of methanol and a gallon of alcohol for your sprayer, and then probably 6 or 7 pounds of dry ice should get you through the day, or approximately 50 head.
So Grant, any final thoughts on freeze branding?
I think the main thing is just take your time, no rush, because them freeze brands last a lifetime, so you want to make sure they're done right. And I appreciate Dr. Johnson having me on Cow-Calf Corner this morning.
And you got a full day of it planned. You're planning to do about 50 head of replacement heifers today, right?
Yes, sir.
I guess one final thing, and I don't know if we talked about it yet, if it was rainy, if it was really humid, if it was really windy and we were dealing with a lot of bad weather, we'd probably cancel this and schedule it for another day, right?
Yes, sir. And we're lucky. It's beautiful sunshine here in Stillwater, Oklahoma. So we're going to run through our yearlings this morning and this afternoon and get them all freeze branded.
Thank you, Grant.
And
thank you all for joining us on Cow-Calf Corner.
Kim Anderson, our crop marketing specialist, is here now. Kim, the big question this week, have wheat prices finally bottomed out?
I think we've hit the bottom. Wheat prices got down around $5.35. Gained back relatively well. I think, $5.40 or $5.50 is probably the real form. We went below that. We got back up to near $6. We're around $5.60, something like that right now. If you look at the average Oklahoma wheat price, it's $5.85. If you look at ending stocks in right now for U.S. wheat, projected to be around 700 million bushels, 850 is the average. You look at the world, ending stocks 9.5 billion bushels, 5-year average 9.6, 10-year average 10.3. So we're below average in both U.S. and the world on wheat stocks, and so I think wheat prices should hold above $5.85, probably up in the $6.20, $6.30 range.
How are corn and soybean prices looking?
Well, if you look at corn prices, they've broken and went down, got down into around that $4.40 level. I think corn prices have probably bottomed out. The harvest is pretty much over. Southern hemisphere is not harvesting very much right now. So you've got corn prices up around $4.60, so they've came off that bottom. You look at corn ending stocks in U.S., 2.15 billion bushels. The average is 1.7. Excess corn, so you'd expect a below average price right now. The world has average stocks, and that's a positive. So we got corn prices $4.50, $4.60. The average is $4.80. If you look at soybeans, that's the good news. Beans broke for a while. They got down around below $12. Came back up, running $12.50 to $13.20, somewhere in that range. You look at soybean stocks, 250 million bushels. The average is $4.50. Tight beans in the United States. But worldwide, you've got well above average ending stocks for soybeans. So that kind of weighs on the other end. So you'd expect bean prices, the average is $10.70. They're up around $12.40, something right in there now. And so you'd expect them to hold up there with our tight stocks.
How about cotton? How's it looking?
Well, cotton's broken just a little bit. We were running up 85, 86 there for a good while. Cotton prices got down to 76, 77, back up around 78. Looks like cotton's going to hold relatively steady. You'll remember that the crop came in a little higher than expected. Tight ending stocks or below average ending stocks in both the U.S. and the world.
Let's talk about this next growing year and the 2024 crop. How are prices kind of looking? What's the outlook for wheat?
Well, if you look at wheat, price is slight right now. The market's offering, 20 or 30 cents higher price than it is now. That's probably a pretty good estimate.
How are beans and corn looking for 2024?
Well, if you look, the forward contract for corn about 25 cents higher than current prices, so a little bit higher expectations for corn. On soybeans, it's just the other way, about 80 cents less than current prices. So looks like slightly lower prices for beans, slightly higher prices for corn and wheat.
And then we also want to keep an eye on cotton.
Cotton, there you look out in the forward months and out into the 24 marketing year. Cotton prices 4 or 5, maybe 6 cents lower than current prices.
Okay, Kim, thanks a lot. We'll see you next week.
Anaplasmosis is a common cattle disease we see here in Oklahoma and really this entire region of the United States. Many producers are going to be familiar with the clinical signs. It's caused by a rickettsial bacteria that invades the red blood cells of the cow. That leads to anemia, jaundice, weakness, inappetence. We can also see abortions related to these infections, as well as retained placentas, and even in severe cases, death. The challenge with this disease is once these cows are infected, they're infected for life and remain carriers. They serve as sources of infection for those that have not been exposed yet. We do have antimicrobial treatments, antibiotics that can be prescribed by a veterinarian to address the initial infection. However, they will not eliminate the carrier status. We don't have any approved medications here in the United States currently available to eliminate the carrier status. So it becomes important for producers to be aware of the disease. If we see signs that could be consistent with anaplasmosis, and we want to either sample those animals, which testing is done on a blood test, and or treat those animals, we need to be cautious when we're handling them, because remember, they are anemic, they can be weak, and just the stress of handling can tip them over into really a serious situation. Once we go to diagnosis, OSU researchers continue to work on this disease, even working on a chute-side test that they're working to become commercially available. If a producer is not sure that they have anaplasmosis in their herd, it's important to work with their veterinarian to develop a plan of addressing this potential disease. We want to make sure new introductions are tested prior to arrival in case they have not been exposed previously. We also want to take other biosecurity measures like handling animals carefully, making sure we're not introducing those new introductions right off. We want to make sure we're not reusing equipment such as needles from animal to animal, which can also spread the disease. It's transmitted primarily by ticks, but we can also see transmission with biting flies. And again, we as humans can mechanically transmit the disease through common equipment. We routinely see bovine anaplasmosis in Oklahoma and this region. However, in other parts of the United States, they are beginning to see a similar infection caused by Theileria. Theileria causes similar signs and is coordinated with a relatively new tick we're seeing in the U.S., the Asian longhorn tick. So if you're suspecting anaplasmosis, it may be worth discussing with your veterinarian if you want to test for anaplas as well as Theileria too. For more information on bovine anaplasmosis, please visit the SUNUP website.
And just a quick reminder about the upcoming 2023 Winter Crop School. This event will be December 19th to the 20th at the second floor ballroom at the Student Union on the OSU campus. The Winter Crop School is a great opportunity for agronomists and producers to learn about the latest research and management strategies for crop and forage production in the southern Great Plains. For more information about cost and how to register, just go to sunup.okstate.edu.
Finally, today, it's been an exciting few months for the 21st class of the Oklahoma Agricultural Leadership Program. They recently hit the Medill area, touring manufacturers who serve farmers and ranchers, including the family-owned Oklahoma Wire and Steel. And that's where video production manager Craig Woods caught up with the group.
The Oklahoma Ag Leadership Program is a statewide program for ranchers, farmers, and agribusiness people from anywhere across the state. And the program consists of essentially 20 months with 13 seminars, mostly in the state.
Okay, my name is Mike Murphy. I'm the quality manager.
Today we've been here in Medill looking at OK brand wire and steel products.
When you find out that you actually have a steel mill that actually buys scrap and melts it right here in southern Oklahoma, it catches a lot of people by surprise. It's very unique to have that kind of operation in a small community of Medill, Oklahoma.
Thought it was spectacular. A company like this, family owned and operated for 40-something years, supplying farmers and ranchers in Oklahoma with American-made, Oklahoma-made products.
What are you talking about, the continuous gas?
And so they take anything from raw materials, essentially scrap metal, melt it down at about 3,000 degrees, and then form it into these billets. And then ultimately it goes to the next plant where it's converted into various fencing, whether it's barbed wire, cattle, hog panels, or whatever kind of fencing that they need at that time for their market.
Had no idea that we'd have the opportunities like that we've had so far. From going down through Altus, looking at cotton country, all the way coming back here to Ardmore and Medill areas, looking at research facilities through Oklahoma State and Noble, and then here at OK Brand. Well, there's agriculture everywhere in the state. Producers of all kinds and types throughout the countryside here in Oklahoma.
Part of the reason that we do such a variety of visits in our program is we want them just to be aware of what is all involved in agriculture. A lot of times we think of it as just wheat fields and cattle, and it's so much more than that. So we look at all different crops, we look at all different kinds of livestock. We look at the forest industry, and then ultimately we look at manufacturing that's related to agriculture, and it all ties together ultimately.
That'll do it for our show this week. A reminder, you can see us anytime on our website and also follow us on YouTube and social media. I'm Lyndall Stout. Have a great week, everyone, and remember, Oklahoma agriculture starts at sunup.